Secret Files, the hidden story of Jack the Ripper. A killer removes a human kidney in total darkness in under 4 minutes without making a sound. In 1888 Whitechapel, he mailed half of it to the police and claimed he ate the rest. 5 women were butchered. 0 arrests were ever made. The world gave him a name, Jack the Ripper, the first celebrity serial killer in history. But buried evidence reveals something far more disturbing, and by the end of this video, you'll see why the official story doesn't hold up. Subscribe and support Dark Decoded X. 2 deep investigations every week. Share where you're watching from in the comments. Seeing our growing community from around the world always brings me purpose. Now let the investigation begin. Before forensics, before psychology, before we even had words for a monster like him, there was Jack. Victorian London was already dangerous, but this was something else. Precision surgery in the dark, organs taken like trophies, letters mocking the living while the dead lay in silence. Jack the Ripper didn't just terrorize a city, he rewired fear itself. And here's the part most never admit. The horror didn't end with the killings. The world ignored women. They were silenced twice, once by the knife, and again by history. Tonight, we peel back the fog and stare into the mind of a killer the world still refuses to understand. The first cut. He moved like a surgeon in the shadows. September 30th, 1888. 1:45 a.m. Catherine Eddowes is found in Mitre Square, throat severed, face mutilated beyond recognition, organs extracted with surgical precision. Her kidney is gone. Here's the thing that should make your skin crawl. The Whitechapel murders history shows the killer had less than 4 minutes before patrol officers returned, in near total darkness, with a single blade. He removed specific organs, avoided major blood vessels that would have sprayed evidence, and vanished without a witness. Doctors at the autopsy were horrified, not just by the violence but by the skill. This wasn't rage. This was someone who understood human anatomy better than most surgeons of the era. The Canonical Five victims weren't random. They were practicing. And here's the question nobody wants to answer. Practice for what? The letter that changed everything. Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. The Dear Boss letter arrived September 27th, 1888, written in red ink, signed Jack the Ripper. It promised more murders. It mocked the police. It gave the killer a name that would never die. But here's what shatters the legend. Most experts believe the letter was fake, written by a journalist to sell newspapers. The real killer probably never called himself Jack. He likely never wanted fame. He wanted something darker. Think about that. The name we know, the legend we built, the industry worth millions, it's all based on a hoax. The actual murderer operated in silence while the press created a carnival. And it worked. Jack the Ripper true crime became entertainment while 5 women bled out in alleyways. The circus was more important than the corpses. Room 13, the final victim. November 9th, 1888. Mary Jane Kelly, 25 years old. Room 13, Miller's Court. When the landlord forced the door open, grown men vomited. What the Ripper did to Kelly wasn't murder. It was obliteration. For the first and only time, he had privacy. A locked room, hours instead of minutes, and he used every second. Her body was stripped of flesh. Organs were arranged deliberately. Her heart was removed and never found. Her face was carved beyond recognition. Crime scene photographs still exist, and modern homicide detectives who've seen them describe it as one of the most disturbing murder scenes in recorded history. And then silence. After Kelly, the Ripper vanished. No more murders, no more letters, just absence. Was she the goal all along? Or did something happen to the killer that same night? Because in every unsolved serial killer case, patterns matter, and Mary Jane Kelly breaks this one completely. The suspect police never arrested. Police suspected him in 1888. His name was Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant barber living in Whitechapel. He suffered violent hallucinations, despised women, and was later institutionalized in an asylum in 1891. But here's the part that changes everything. Internal police documents suggest officers believed Kosminski was the Ripper and let him walk free. A city police official later wrote that a witness identified the killer but refused to testify because he was also Jewish and feared the consequences. The system chose silence. Decades later, in 2014, DNA taken from a shawl allegedly belonging to victim Catherine Eddowes was matched to Kosminski's descendants, with a reported 99.2% probability. The science is disputed. The shawl's history is questionable, but the implication is horrifying. Either the most infamous unsolved serial killer case in history has already been solved, and no one wants to admit it, or the truth is still being protected. Stay with me. The shadows of history grow deeper. Subscribe now to uncover the secrets they tried to hide. Jack the Ripper might not have been alone. September 30th, 1888, the night history calls the double event. Elizabeth Stride is found dead at 1 a.m. in Dutfield's yard. 45 minutes later, Catherine Eddowes is discovered in Mitre Square, nearly a mile away. But here's the problem no one likes to confront. Eddowes wasn't just killed. She was surgically dissected, organs removed, face destroyed, in near total darkness. And all of it happened in under 9 minutes, the maximum gap between police patrols. Modern forensic experts say it's physically impossible for one person to commit both murders in that window. So either Jack had help or there were multiple killers operating the same night. Different weapon angles, different mutilation patterns, different behavioral signatures. What if Jack the Ripper was never one man at all? What if the Whitechapel murders history were several killers collapsed into a single legend because one monster was easier to sell than the truth? Why Jack the Ripper became immortal? The Whitechapel murders history didn't just spark a police investigation, they created an industry. Books, films, walking tours, documentaries. Jack the Ripper became a brand, a Halloween costume, a streaming obsession. Meanwhile, the 5 women he murdered became footnotes. We remember his nickname, we forget their names. That is the real horror. The media sensationalized the violence, sold fear as entertainment, and helped turn a killer into folklore. We convinced ourselves he was a criminal genius because we liked the idea of evil being brilliant. But the truth is simpler and uglier. Jack the Ripper wasn't a mastermind. He was lucky. He preyed on vulnerable women in a lawless slum where no one was protected and no one was listening. He wasn't powerful, he was a coward. And yet we built him a throne, and we're still sitting at its base. Why society wanted him to succeed. Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, Mary Jane Kelly, 5 names. Say them out loud. We don't, do we? Instead, we say Jack. We know his letters, his legend, his myths. We built museums, tours, movies, and Halloween costumes. The Canonical Five victims became footnotes in their own deaths. The ugly truth? Victorian society wanted them dead. Prostitutes, alcoholics, homeless, the undesirables. When the murders started, newspapers called it cleaning up the streets. The police barely investigated until public outrage forced them to. And today, we've turned their suffering into entertainment. Jack the Ripper true crime is now a billion-dollar industry built on 5 women nobody mourned. We remember the killer because he represents what fascinates us. Evil is brilliant, untouchable, legendary, but he wasn't brilliant. He was lucky. He killed where nobody cared, and we made him immortal. The file they'll never close, 138 years later. DNA evidence exists. Suspects were identified. Witness statements were logged. Modern criminal profilers have built detailed psychological profiles. We have everything needed to close this case, except certainty. And maybe that's the point. The unsolved serial killer case is more valuable than the answer. If Scotland Yard announced tomorrow that it was Kosminski, Druitt, or anyone else, would it matter? The legend would die, the industry would collapse. The myth we built is bigger than the man ever was. The real investigation isn't who Jack was, it's why we need him to stay unknown. Why we worship violence when it's packaged as a mystery. Why we binge murder content while scrolling past the real victims' names. The unsolved serial killer case isn't about Jack the Ripper anymore. It's about us. What we choose to remember, what we choose to forget, and what that says about the darkness we carry. If this investigation opened your eyes, like, subscribe. Hit that bell, share widely, and watch the next documentaries pinned on the end screen. Jack the Ripper killed 5 women the world ignored. Then we turned him into a legend and erased them again. 138 years of obsession over a coward with a knife. We built monuments to the monster and forgot the names of the dead. If you remember nothing else, remember theirs.